guys, in this month's top 5, I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite books of 2019 so far. So, it's the halfway point of 2019, meaning that I've read a good chunk of books so far. So it's time to kind of analyze what I've enjoyed so far this year in 2019. And yeah, by the time 2019 ends, my best of the year could change. Who knows? I haven't read, you know, everything that I plan on reading for this year, so there may be some other things that just come out of nowhere and get to the top of this list. You know, I was kind of looking at all the books that I've read so far this year, because I want to say I've read about 25 books already for this year, and I was just kind of looking at everything, and yeah, there were books that I really enjoyed and I really liked, but at the same time I was just kind of looking at everything, and I kind of realized that I didn't have something that was just standing out to me, you know, because for the past several years, whenever I've kind of made this list, there's always a book, it's like, yes, number one, instantly number one. I have a favorite for the year, and it remains a favorite for the entire year. And that hasn't happened to me yet this year. It's very weird. I don't know. I don't understand what's happening. You guys, I'm so confused. Because normally I usually have a favorite book by now, and it hasn't happened. So yeah, this list is definitely subject to change by the time I get to my best, or my favorite books at the end of the year. So yeah, let's get going. My top 5 favorite books that I've read so far in 2019. At number 5, I have The Raven's Shadow Trilogy by Anthony Ryan. So not so much the whole trilogy, because I read the trilogy, but the first book was actually a reread for me, because I wanted to finish up the trilogy since I had started the first book like years ago. So yeah, the first book was a reread for me. I freaking loved this second book, but book 3 unfortunately was a big disappointment. It's like I still liked it, but it was definitely a big disappointment, especially just considering my love for books 1 and 2. But yeah, for the purposes of this top 5, I have the second book in the trilogy, Tower Lord. I really freaking loved this second book to the trilogy. You guys, if you don't know what the Raven's Shadow Trilogy is about, it is a fantasy world, very much like something like Westeros on Game of Thrones, if you will. Yeah, kind of with a more medieval type of setting. And yeah, what you get with like the first book you're introduced to a little boy named Valen Alsorna, and the first book pretty much chronicles his rise into a badass warrior. And then yeah, this second book, which is my favorite, I want to say like this is probably one of my favorites in the whole trilogy. The second book continues the story of Valen Alsorna. He's an adult man now. He's still a badass. But yeah, there's a lot of conflict coming into being within the world that he lives in, and not only do we get the point of view of Valen Alsorna, but we also get the point of view of a princess, and we get the point of view of one of Valen's friends, and we get the point of view of a young woman who's like the niece of a character that was introduced in the first book. There's a lot of characters. Yeah, guys, I'm not going to sit here and go into too many details. But yeah, this second book was just really fun from start to finish. I loved being with the characters and being in the world. And yeah, the first book was just a really tiny portion of the story in some ways, and what Anthony Ryan does with the second book, he really just fleshes out the world and the world building and the characters and all the various different empires and whatnot. Because yeah, like I said, book 1 was just kind of localized in some ways, just a really small chunk of the map, and yeah, the second book really just stretches all over the place within this world, and that was really fun. And yeah, I loved having additional points of view other than the main character of Valen Alsorna. So yeah, Tower Lord, book 2 in the series, makes my top 5. At number 4, I have The Witches of St Petersburg by Imogen Edwards Jones, and this is a book that takes place in Imperial Russia, kind of like right there at the end of the 1800s, going into the early 1900s, basically leading up to the fall of the Romanov dynasty. So yeah, if you love Russian imperial historical fiction, this is definitely for you. This book follows the point of view of two sisters from Montenegro. They both marry into senior positions in the Romanov household. And what's unique about these two sisters is that they are kind of ostracized and shunned from the Romanov society and whatnot. Even though they're part of the nobility, they're kind of shunned because they're seen as kind of weird. They practice occult magic, and they're ostracized for that because they're seen as kind of weird. And over the course of this story, these two princesses, they get into the good graces of Tsarina Alexandra. Tsarina Alexandra, who has produced a bunch of healthy daughters, but she has yet to produce a male heir. So that's where these two princesses from Montenegro come into play. They're there to use their occult magic to help Tsarina Alexandra produce a male heir. But as we know through history, Tsarina Alexandra produces a very sickly male heir who has hemophilia. So yeah, eventually the sisters, they make contact with the infamous Rasputin. It's them who get him into the Romanov household. So yeah, this was definitely a book. If you saw my review for this book, I had some complicated feelings for this book because there were certain elements of it that I really enjoyed and loved, but then some other elements that kind of grossed me out and sickened me a little bit. So I have some complicated feelings, but at the end of the day, I still really love this book and enjoyed it because I do love all things Imperial Russia and the Romanov dynasty. So yeah, if this sounds like your sort of thing, pick it up. At number 3, Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare, and this is the third and final book in her Dark Artifices trilogy, this being part of her greater Shadowhunter universe. And yeah, what to say about this book? I mean, yeah, Cassandra Clare, she's never going to stop writing these books set in the Shadowhunter universe. It may every year that she releases another book, it actually makes it a bit more difficult to talk about them because if you've never read any of the series, it's like it's hard to talk about what the series is even about. You know what I mean? It's like only other people who have read the series, you know, especially in depth, and they've read every single book, only those other people are going to understand what the hell I'm even talking about. But yeah, if you don't know what the Shadowhunter universe is, it's, you know, it's these teenagers who have like angelic blood running in their veins, and they have like super strength and superpowers and whatnot, and they fight demons and monsters, vampires and werewolves, you know, those types of things. It's that type of thing. And yeah, sometimes young adult is hit or miss for me, but for some reason, Cassandra Clare, I mean, I just continue to love all of her books. I continue to love this world, and especially all these characters. It's just kind of a guilty pleasure. What these books have turned into, they've kind of turned into guilty pleasures more than anything, and I love that. But I feel like her writing over time, especially with this third book in this particular series, I mean, I feel like Cassandra Clare's writing has just greatly matured, and I feel like she's really starting to grow with her audience. Like, she realizes she needs to start growing with her audience because her audience who initially started these books as teenagers are no longer teenagers, you know? They're either in their late 20s or 30s or whatever. Which is where I'm at. I'm in my early 30s, and I started these books like way back in my mid-20s, I want to say. So yeah, this third book in this particular series, I really loved it. The Dark Artifices trilogy as a whole was just incredibly well done, very intense. Things got very dark and very sexy. I loved some of the risks that Cassandra Clare was taking, risks that she probably would have dared never took back in like the Mortal Instruments and whatnot. So yeah, I'm done. I'm happy that I'm done with this trilogy. I'm excited to move on into the next trilogy that she's coming out with. At number 2, I have The Help by Catherine Stockett. Ooh, this was so good, you guys. It's so freaking good. Just a strange little book in some ways, because the book, if you don't know what The Help is about, it's about Mississippi in the South, the Deep South, pretty much. You know, during the Civil Rights movement, and it follows this young white woman who wants to tell the story of Southern maids, you know, get their stories and their experiences working with white women and raising their children, essentially. So yeah, it follows a young white woman, and then it also follows several black maids. And yeah, this is just a really gripping, touching story during this time period, but it's all done in a rather humorous, quirky way, which might sound strange, because like I said, this takes place in Mississippi during the Civil Rights movement, and you would think things would be very, very dark and intense and dramatic, and there are certain elements of that, but more than anything, this book is very light and fluffy and quirky and humorous, and it really gives you like a sense of hope. You know, it doesn't drag you down, because a lot of times, yeah, you can read a book about the civil rights movement and all it'll do is just drag you down. You know, it'll just drag you down and you feel depressed by the damn ending. But yeah, this book just, there's something uplifting and hopeful about it, and it really raises your spirits, and you feel good by the end of this book, you know, and that's what I want. I want to feel good by the end of a book. So yeah, I really love this book. I watched the movie first initially, so I kind of knew what to expect heading into the book, but yeah, I loved the movie, loved this book. I definitely recommend it. And at number 1, my favorite book that I've read so far this year in 2019 is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is World War II historical fiction in France, and it follows 2 sisters. And yeah, these 2 sisters are fighting in the war in very different ways. The older sister is fighting what I would call the silent war. She's fighting at home, trying to help her friends and her neighbors who are Jewish, and yeah, she has German soldiers who are living at her house, so things are very, very intense and dramatic for her. And then the younger sister is fighting the war of resistance, and yeah, she's helping downed airmen, men who who get shot down from the sky. She's helping those guys get across the French border to safety and whatnot. So yeah, these 2 sisters, what you quickly find out is that these 2 sisters have very opposing points of view when it comes to the war and what their involvement should be, but yeah, they both are fighting for the same cause, just in very different ways. And yeah, this is an epic saga of sorts during the war with these 2 sisters and their individual journeys and the things that they learn about each other and what they learn about themselves and what they're capable of. And yeah, it's just very dark and dramatic and intense, and just beautifully written by Kristen Hanna. Just definitely one of those breathtaking novels. I definitely recommend this one as well if you haven't already. So you guys, that is it for my top 5. In the comments below, what are your favorite books that you guys have read so far this year in 2019? What books have stood out to you that just continue to stick with you even to this halfway point of the year? So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and if you like this video, you may like these other videos.